What's up everyone, Matt Gone Through here, and today's video is probably going to be a little different than what you're probably used to. I saw Fantano doing a Tool tier list video the other day, so that kind of sparked the inspiration for this video right here. We're going to be doing a tier list on Korn, my favorite band of all time. I've been listening to Korn for about 10 years already, and I know their discography very well. I've heard every album front to back, including the new one that just came out last month. So where do all these Korn albums stand ranked against each other? Let's find out. Okay guys, so I'm over here on tiermaker.com and let's go ahead and get started. So S tier is going to be top of the line Korn records, the ones that I would recommend you listening to. And then the D tier is pretty much the worst Korn albums of all time, the ones that you should more than likely avoid. So without further ado, let's go ahead and put Path of Totality right in D tier. A lot of y'all will probably agree with me on this one. It is definitely Korn's worst record. Me personally, I don't think that there's a single bad Korn album per se, but this one, in my opinion, is definitely the one that's the most flawed. It didn't really age all too well. Dubstep as a genre for me didn't age too well either. I was trying to listen to dubstep around the time of this release because this album kind of persuaded me to listen to Skrillex and Downlink and all the other dubstep DJs that were collabing on this project, but yeah, the genre as a whole did not age well. I go back and I listen to some of this stuff and I'm like, what the fuck was I listening to back in high school? I will admit though, Skrillex's Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites EP is definitely very good. It still holds up to this day. But yeah, Path of Totality, I really only go back to like 5 or 6 songs on this record willingly. And that's basically it. Like, the album did not age well at all, sorry to say. I defended the crap out of this album when it came out, but there's really no defending this album whatsoever. Another album that I think belongs in D tier is, you might disagree with me on this one, but I'm going to go ahead and put Korn III, Remember Who You Are, just because this album was a little bit of a disappointment to me. I don't know what it was. Like, it sounds like a good idea on paper. Ross Robinson, the guy that produced the first 2 Korn albums, is coming back to produce a 3rd album with the band. That's why it's called Korn III. So I was really looking forward to this, and it just did not sound good, like, at all. I appreciate what they were trying to do. You know, they were going to go back to their roots and all that good stuff. They were going to sound old school again, but I remember picking up this album when it first came out, and I remember being very disappointed by it. You know, Let the Guilt Go is a good song. Oildale is a really good song. Holding All These Lies is pretty good too. There's a couple of songs on here that are really dope, but as far as the album as a whole, it's just all over the place. Like, Lead the Parade is probably one of the worst songs that I've heard off this album because I don't know what the hell Jonathan is trying to do with his vocals on the verses for that song. The chorus is good, but the verses are just no, it just doesn't work. I'm sorry, but yeah. So these two albums right here, definitely the worst in Korn's discography, at least in my opinion. You know, I appreciate what they were trying to do. I appreciate the changes they wanted to try and implement, but I think there's reasons why they went back to a more traditional heavy sound. So moving on up to C tier, I'm gonna go ahead and put The Paradigm Shift. It came out in 2013. This album was another one that was really hyped up because this was the return of Brian Head Welch, who left the band in 2004 to become a Christian, and then he came back in 2013 and reunited with the band, so all was right with the world. You know, it sounded really cool, but the thing with this album is that they were pretty much merging elements of Path of Totality and Korn III, and I guess 2 of those albums had a baby, and out popped The Paradigm Shift. But The Paradigm Shift is a lot better than these 2 albums right here at the bottom. Spike in My Veins is a really good song. Pray For Me is probably my favorite track off the record. Never Never is Korn's first, and I think they're only number 1, if I remember correctly, or something like that, according to Jonathan Davis. He says that's the song that he's the most proud of. But I really don't like that record for the reasons why he liked the record. He said that it was real simple, you know, when he was writing Never Never, he said that it was real simple and all that, but to me it just sounded very repetitive. I feel like the band could have written something a little bit more, but I'm not taking away from the fact that it was their number 1, you know, that's cool for them, you know, I definitely applaud them for that. But yeah, the album as a whole is not that bad, it's really good. But if you listen to the deluxe edition, you get a song called Hater. And that song is really dope. It definitely got me through a lot of difficult times in my life, so definitely check out Hater if you haven't already. And another album that I think belongs in C tier, you guys are probably going to hate me on this one, but I'm going to try and explain myself as best as I can. Life is Peachy, the second Korn album. I think it belongs in C tier for a couple reasons. The very first Korn album that I heard was the self-titled one, the first album, the one that's on my shirt. And then after that, I heard Follow the Leader, and then I heard Issues, and then I think I heard CO on the other side. So when I go back to Life is Peachy and when I'm listening to it to this day, it still sounds like a band that's, trying to get started, trying to perfect their sound. And I know that's why a lot of people actually like this record, but I don't know, I just don't go back to Life is Peachy as much as most other people do, I don't hold it in high regards like everybody else does. But I'm not saying that the album is terrible by any means, like there are some songs on here that I still go back to. I actually go back to the whole album as a whole as well. Mr. Rogers is a great song. No Place to Hide, Good God, Chi, Twist, their cover of Lowrider, their cover of Wicked of Wicked by Ice Cube featuring Chino Moreno from the Deftones. Like this album is really good in its regards. I just don't know why I don't go back to it as often as I should. Very weird. But anyways, it is what it is, Another album that I think belongs in C tier as well is Korn's Untitled record. I didn't really like the album when it first came out, but throughout the years it did grow on me. I guess you could say that the album was ahead of its time. To this day, I think that the album itself is very underrated. I don't think Korn plays anything from the Untitled era live anymore, which is really sad because Evolution's a great song, Starting Over is a great song, Hold On is still really good. Kiss is a very underrated song. It's like a ballad. Whenever I would go through like a breakup or something, I would listen to that song and it definitely helped make me feel better. This is the only Korn record that was released as a trio. So it was just Jonathan, Monkey, and Fieldy. That was it. They lost David and they lost Head around the time. And it definitely shows. You could tell that they were trying to experiment all over the place and just see what would work. And Terry Bozzio does drums on I Will Protect You and I think a couple other songs on here. And that motherfucker is a beast. Definitely listen to I Will Protect You from this album and just listen to the album as a whole. It definitely holds up a little bit better today than it did back in 2007. So moving on up to B tier. What could we put in B tier? I'm going to go ahead and put See You on the Other Side because I think this was the first Korn album that I bought with my own money. And I remember popping it into my stereo and literally being scared by it. The version of Twisted Transistor that you find on streaming sites like Spotify and Apple Music is a little different than the album version. Definitely listen to the album version because you have this weird-ass intro that starts it off, and it's like backwards and funky. It's weird. I remember literally being freaked out by it. I remember being freaked out by the whole album. The main reason I bought it was because Comin' Undone was on the album, and that was like my favorite Korn song for the longest time. But dude, this album kicks ass in my opinion. There's some very underrated songs on here, and it's just so beautiful. I really like the Alice in Wonderland vibes that they were going for in this thing. So what else can I put in B tier? Let's see. I think I'm actually gonna go ahead and put Take a Look in the Mirror in B tier. I don't know if I'm gonna change something at the end of the video or what, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and put Take a Look in the Mirror at B tier as well because this album gets a lot of shit. Same with See You on the Other Side because Take a Look in the Mirror was the last album with Head, and then See You on the Other Side was the first album without Head. But to me, Take a Look in the Mirror was very underrated and I guess overhated, if that makes sense. There's a song called Play Me that has Nas on here. Not Lil Nas X, but the Nas. And it's a really good song too. There's a cover of One that's a hidden track. It's at the very, very end of the album, One by Metallica. It's a really great cover. I just wish they did like the solo. They condensed into about like 4 minutes because they had to play it live on MTV with the MTV Icon Metallica special, and they just sandwiched it at the very end of the album. So to me, it's a really good cover. I like it a lot. Definitely sounds well with Korn's sound. And Right Now is on here. Y'all Want a Single is on here. Break Some Off is on here. It's really good. Did My Time from the Tomb Raider soundtrack is on this album. There's some really good songs on here. I don't know why it gets all the hate that it does. So moving on to A tier real quick, we are gonna go ahead and put Untouchables because this album is just a fucking ass kicking. It's not perfect by any means, which is why it's not an S tier, but it's still a damn good album. It was my favorite Korn album for the longest time. Here to Stay is probably my favorite Korn song of all time, and it's actually on that record. Thoughtless is a really good song. It talks about bullying. No One's There is another really great song as well. There's so much cool stuff on here. Hollow Life is very underrated. Definitely listen to this album if you're into heavy music and you don't listen to Korn for whatever reason, because you might like Untouchables quite a bit. And let's go ahead and put the Serenity of Suffering from 2016 onto A tier as well. The reason why I hold this album to such a high regard is because of the timing that it came out. 2016 was a very shitty year for me as much as it was for other people. During 2016, I was in this abusive relationship with this girl, and when we finally broke up, the album came out like a couple days later, so it was just perfect timing. There's a lot of lyrical content on the Serenity of Suffering that definitely means a lot to me, and that album definitely helped me get through that very difficult time in my life. I really love that album a lot. And moving on to S tier, we're going to go ahead and put the self-titled Korn record just because it has to go to S tier. That album is very iconic now to this day. It's probably going to be a classic within a couple years from now. This album pretty much sparked an entire movement. Nu metal would not be a thing if it wasn't for this first Korn album right there. Because of this album, we have bands like Linkin Park and Papa Roach and Limp Bizkit, Deftones, and even like modern metalcore and deathcore bands. A lot of these bands were influenced by Korn. And what Korn did with this album was they took stuff from Rage Against the Machine, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Faith No More, and pretty much a bunch of bands that were out at the time, Pantera especially, that were trying to take what rock and metal were doing and make it kind of groovy and funky at the same time. So Korn took that influence and made something all their own, and out popped the Mudvaynes and the Limp Bizkits of the world. And for better or for worse, you know, this album was very iconic to this day. And even people that don't like Korn will admit that the self-titled album is pretty much the best thing that they released. And I could kind of agree with them to that to an extent. Now, going on to another album that belongs in S tier, it's definitely Follow the Leader. Follow the Leader is probably my favorite Korn album of all time, and it definitely ages very well. There's only one particular flaw on here, and that's All in the Family. It's this weird tongue-in-cheek kind of rap battle parody thing with Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit and Jonathan Davis from Korn. That song is very terrible. I think Jonathan said himself that it's like Korn's worst album, and I could kind of agree to that to an extent. It's just very, very weird to listen to in 2019, especially since there's like homophobic slurs in the song that definitely would not pass nowadays if it was released in 2019. Sometimes I'll go back to it for like a quick chuckle just to see like it's one of those like it's so bad it's good kind of things, but yeah, you could definitely skip that song, but that's completely fine because there's another hidden track on Follow the Leader, and it's a cover of Earache My Eye by Cheech Chong, and it actually features Cheech Marin on vocals, so that's really dope. Definitely give Follow the Leader a listen to. There's so many good songs on here. It's on Justin, Got the Life, Freak on a Leash, Dead Bodies Everywhere especially. It's a really fucking kick-ass song, especially for Halloween. Man, so good. Another album that I think belongs in S tier is, of course, Issues. Follow the Leader and Issues were two very good albums that came out at the time. Falling Away From Me was featured on South Park when the band was on that episode. Korn's Groovy Pirate Ghost Ship Mystery, or whatever it was called. MTV even teamed up with Korn to do a cover contest where fans would submit their artwork for the album, and if the band liked it, it would be the album cover. So this was the winning result right here. I forgot who the name of the artist was, but I just really hope that MTV and Korn wrote the guy a fat ass check, because this Issues album cover definitely became very iconic with the band later on. In 2002, when they were on tour, they would sell these little Korn dolls as well. Like, they actually made physical dolls of the thing, and it's super kick ass. It's really fucking badass. Really great record. I love how the songs just flow in with one another. It's just a really great listen to all around. For sure, these 3 Korn albums at the top you could listen to all the way through without having to skip a single song, and that's what I like about it. So now we have the last album, which is their most recent release, The Nothing. Just came out last month in September of 2019. So I'm probably going to go ahead and put this at B tier, at least for right now. Maybe my opinion on the album will change a couple years from now, maybe after a couple more listens or whatever. The only reason why I don't put it at S tier is because I know for sure that it's not an S tier Korn album, even though it is really good. But I don't know if it necessarily belongs on A tier, because I don't know if I could put it on the same level as the Serenity of Suffering and Untouchables, just because, like I said, I was going through very difficult times in my life when those 2 albums were released, when I first started listening to them. So I hold those 2 albums in very high regard. So in my opinion, it's kind of hard to top those, but I don't mind putting the Nothing in B tier, because it's still a really great album overall. It's like a 7.5, 8 out of 10 for me. This album has a lot of feels on this record, because Jonathan lost his mother and I think his wife recently as well. So you could definitely hear the pain and the hurt and the torment in his voice all throughout the album. Very great song. And listen to Cold. I think it's a single right now, and my god, that song kicks ass. John's vocals from Take a Look in the Mirror, the growls, they definitely improved a lot on this record, so definitely take a listen to that. So without further ado, there is my tier list for all 13 Korn studio albums. If you guys want to, I'll leave a link in the description below, so that way you guys could check out this template yourself and make your own tier list and share it with me, share it with your friends, share it with your family, and all that good stuff. So if you guys want me to make more tier list videos in the future, please let me know, and I'll be more than happy to do so. And on that note, take care, you guys, stay safe, and stay brutal.